picture this. It's still 2021. 2022 was just right around the corner, and it was shaping up to be an excellent year for video games. And yet there were only two games that I was really hyped for: Elden Ring and Stray. One is arguably the most ambitious From Software game to date and the quintessential open world game that will pave the way for the gaming industry moving forward. The other one is where you play as a cat.
Oh, I'm a cat. I'm a sexy cat.
That might sound like I'm downplaying the sales pitch for Stray, but in reality I'm actually not. Tell you the truth, that little synopsis is all I needed to know to be excited for this game. I'm not exactly what one would call a cat person, I'm more of a dog person. But over the years I've grown to love cats more and more. Being a dog person has given me a new perspective on cats, and honestly I now understand the appeal to them. The one thing that I admire the most about cats is that unlike dogs, they know how to take care of themselves. We humans do not deserve dogs, but I shudder to think what would happen to them if humans were no longer to be around. But cats? They'll be okay. The world of Stray is a place where no dog would survive, but a resourceful and cunning cat such as this magnificent orange tabby most definitely would. Stray's story begins with a clutter of cats and a seemingly post-apocalyptic Earth. The world feels a lot like the one in The Last of Us, where Mother Nature takes back what rightfully belongs to her. Vegetation and greenery envelopes the once industrial world like a continental band-aid covering up vandalism left by humans. The four feline companions hop from meadow pipe to meadow pipe until one pipe actually gives in and the remaining cat falls into the deep and dark pit below. Each and every cat's expression looks ambiguous, but their collective stares suggest a look of horror and sadness for their fallen friend. The poor orange tabby was lost. Or so it seemed. It turns out that cats can survive ridiculously long heights. Sliding down a steep ramp as the wall came to a curve, the cat breaks the fall, albeit not so elegantly, crashing down into a sea of junk and tin cans. The injury leaves the cat no choice but to take a deep rest before pushing forward. The cat ventures deep into the sewer system and discovers a city hidden miles below the Earth's surface. Even though the city seems like humanity's final frontier for survival, no living human is actually in sight. What's left in their stead are cynical and depressed robots, the last remaining remnants of the human condition. They are oppressed by the Sentinels, a group of authoritarian robots designed to keep the ordinary robots in their place within the human social hierarchy. Even though humans have been gone for so long, maybe decades, centuries, perhaps even millennia at this point, the Sentinels still enforce and impose the same rules, no questions asked. The only true living organisms left down here are a scientifically engineered bacteria called the Zerks. The people who once lived down here were getting tired of the garbage piling up in the city. Without the proper place to dispose of it, something had to be done. The Zerks were supposed to be the solution, a bacteria that would eat all the garbage in the city. Unfortunately, the Zerks would go on to evolve to eat more than just garbage, adding metal and even human flesh to their dietary intake. Similar to critically acclaimed indie titles like Limbo, Inside, and Little Nightmares, Stray is yet another masterclass in weaving different narrative threads without uttering a single human word. Diegetic sounds are aplenty and they do tell a lot, but there's little to no hand-holding here. The story has many layers to it and is mostly conveyed through robotic translations provided to the cat via a befriended drone and heaps of environmental storytelling should you search every nook and cranny. What starts as a simple plan to ascend and escape turns into something much bigger by the end. The cat wants nothing more than to just find a way back up, but it gets dragged into a mystery that goes beyond anything the cat or even the remaining robots could fathom. I'll go into detail much later on to avoid spoilers so early in the video. That chapter will have a spoiler label on it. I highly suggest that you skip that chapter for now and come back later when you've played the game and experienced it for yourself. At its core, Stray is a puzzle game. Since you play as a cat, the given toolset is different than usual and is tailored accordingly. You can hop onto the smallest of objects and leap up to high ledges with ease. As a cat, you use your paws to scratch and destroy objects in order to distract the robots or gain their attention, and you can use your mouth to carry important items for your next objective. The game also comes with a dedicated meow button, which you can use anytime you want to initiate adorable moments, but also comes in handy in specific sections to gain the attention of foes. There might be lots of jumping and hopping all around the place, but Stray is actually not a platformer. Even in relatively simple platformers like Uncharted, there is still a margin of error to be had, whereas in Stray this margin of error exists elsewhere. The traversal works exactly the same as the grappling system in the Batman Arkham games. A context-sensitive action will appear over ledges and objects following the camera with pinpoint accuracy, and your character will snap into the designated place with just the press of a button. The cat will only ever jump if it knows that it can make the jump. It's an oversimplification of traversal mechanics we have grown used to, but it's the creative choice that works the best. You are role-playing as a cat after all. It is highly unlikely that cats will ever miss a jump in real life, although it does happen every now and then. Although, unlike humans, cats are actually physiologically built for a situation like this. When you think about it, a cat is actually the perfect adventurer for the story the game wants to tell. In the real world, cats are capable of navigating the world around them so effortlessly and so precisely that when mechanically translating that into a game world, it allows the game to focus less on trivial things, such as whether a cat can make a jump, and focus more on serious issues, such as what the remaining civilization actually faces down here. Initially, I found the lack of freedom to be jarring for a cat in a cat's perfect playground, but as the game progressed, it made more and more sense from a narrative standpoint. Apart from the cat's intuitive abilities, you're also equipped with a drone called B12, named after the studio Blue 12. B12 has amnesia and decides to tag along with the hopes of getting some answers. This cute little drone will either hover alongside the cat or tuck itself neatly into the cat's cute little vest. The plastic cover on the top makes it look like the cat is wearing a phone armband a human would typically wear when jogging, but made for a whole torso. Gifted and intelligent as the cat may be, B12 is just as important in this journey, as it acts as a translator between the cat and the robots, can hold puzzle items in an inventory fashion, can hack automated doors, cast light in dark places, and at certain points can even be equipped with a UV light that can eradicate the Zerg bacteria. Together, the cat and the B12 drone must combine their tool sets to help the good robots deceive the bad ones, sneak past dangerous locations, engage in a healthy variety of interesting puzzles, and figuratively go further down the rabbit hole so that they can literally climb up out of it. Most of the reviews for this game were either captured on PC or PlayStation 5, but what you're seeing in this video is footage captured from a PS4 Pro. For a title that technically sits within the indie and AA hemisphere of the gaming world, Stray can punch well above its weight. There's definitely some moments here where Stray can at times look, feel, and even match the quality of a AAA title. But there are some technical blemishes here that will most definitely remind you that Stray is an indie game. In fact, one of the first things that happened to me in the game was clipping through an object and falling through the world. Luckily though, I have a high tolerance for bugs and glitches, and it's nothing a simple restart checkpoint couldn't fix. The checkpoint system is extremely forgiving, and I encourage you to use it. If you feel like something is supposed to be working but isn't, you're most probably right. Glitching through the game world never happened to me again after this point, and the only other bug that forced me to restart was when I was clearly supposed to be able to go through these window bars, but the game simply wouldn't let me. It was an issue that, again, a simple restart checkpoint fixed in no time. Okay, perhaps a little bit of time. The loading times on PS4 Pro are not exactly short, but they're nowhere near as long as, say, a Naughty Dog or Rockstar game. Like most cross-platform titles released in the past year or two, Stray pushes the PS4 Pro to its absolute limits with great results. In spite of the technical blemishes, Stray's presentation is an absolute joy to behold. Even though it lacks the level of polish that oomph you typically find within Sony's long catalog of cinematic games, with inconveniences such as stutters, frequent pop-in, weird collision detection, and some erratic behaviors within the physics engine, I was immersed into the world and world building of Stray from start to finish. This is a marvelous dystopian city, one that blends futuristic and contemporary styles of architecture to create a bleak cyberpunk city set in a post-cyberpunk story, where the civilizational collapse waiting to happen in typical cyberpunk stories has already unfolded by the time the cat enters the picture. A large portion of the game takes place within two hub areas. One is in the slums and the other is in a busy central area simply called Midtown. The slums have an incredibly cozy, homely, and intimate vibe to them. Initially, the robots are afraid of the cat, but they quickly take a liking to it. These robots are inherently good-hearted and they desperately long for a genuine connection. They hang out at bars, meditate inside a non-functioning elevator, and sit in alleyways wearing warm ponchos made by one nurturing robot called Grandma, who loves nothing more than to knit all day. There's also a great amount of verticality in this area that I really appreciate appreciated. Up above, you could see robots talking and throwing things across rooftops, with robots even shouting at them from down below. It really brought a smile to my face because where I am from, I still remember these things used to be a normal part of everyday life and culture. Nowadays, it's all but faded away. There's a strong sense of a small but tight community where everyone knows everyone and they have each other's back. This place grew on me. I had a really hard time saying goodbye to this locale and to the robots that live here. I lingered just a bit longer, trying to find the collectibles and finding that one last well-hidden vending machine just so I can prolong the inevitable and not say goodbye to the good-hearted folks residing in the slums. Midtown, on the other hand, is a gorgeous place in a completely different way. The city is huge and it comes to life with a spectacular range of color and environments painted with neon lights and beautiful surface reflections. The robots here are less talkative and friendly. They're job-oriented, running shops and working in a highly structural system. People here are not desperate for connection, but desperate to have a life worth living for. They are curious as they contemplate why they even work so hard for so many years. They get drunk, sleep on the job. The local residents are fed up of the Sentinels telling them what to do, and so they rebel against the system. The Sentinels survey the streets, imposing their rules and authority over residents and workers alike, and apprehending anyone who defies them. The two hub areas come to life in extremely different ways, but both have so much heart to them. For a city left for dead and overwhelmed by a sense of decay, the world feels so much more alive than the one in Cyberpunk 2077. Blue 12 has done an outstanding job, constructing a beautiful place and a magnificent atmosphere that I found difficult to leave behind. Stray's world is not only a joy to experience visually, but from an auditory standpoint as well. The game truly embodies the sense of wonder and curiosity of inhabiting such a world from a cat's perspective. At times the animations can feel a bit stiff and abrupt, but holistically speaking, the elegance of a cat is still beautifully and authentically rendered, and the sound elevates that elegance to a whole new level. The cat sound effects are absolutely spot on, from the way the paws tap the ground in a gentle rhythm, to how it leaps so swiftly onto ledges and scratches all kinds of furniture and tapestry, all the way to the ruckus it makes when knocking down objects without giving two shits about who they might belong to, and the adorable meows that do not feel overdone at all. Really good stuff. The robots were also capable of striking an emotional chord through the sounds that they made. It never got old seeing the screen on their faces light up around the cat and even showcasing some emotional states such as a cute heart emoji, but it's the sounds they produced that really gave them such a charming quality. Not a single robot can speak intelligible words, but every single one of them, from the citizens in the slums to the workers in Midtown and even B12, phonetically you can actually sense the nervous breakdown and existential crisis these robots are suffering from. They don't have a single clue how to pronounce a word in the English vocabulary, but their emotions are still wonderfully conveyed, and it makes the dark little tale all the more unsettling and heart-wrenching. One robot in particular stands out as a true highlight. He plays music that is so out of tune, yet it oddly sounds so beautiful. There's a peculiarity to the music that just makes it sound so heartfelt and authentic. So much so that I would frequently just let the cat sleep next to the guitar player and absorb the meditative beauty of it all. In addition to the excellent use of diegetic sound, the game also comes with a surprisingly exceptional soundtrack. From the menu screen all the way to the credits, Stray's music consistently mixes the ethereal ambience that I adore so much from Limbo and fuses it with a cyberpunk theme, complemented with a side of upbeat cat jingles that give such a bleak world a flavor of whimsical adorableness. Stray's soundtrack is just so wonderful and relaxing, and I look forward to using it as background music when playing what I call a burnout game or a zen game or a podcast game. Making reviews is an extremely fun and productive but also time-consuming and mentally demanding activity, and relaxing games of this nature are of excellent help in maintaining sanity from one review to the next, and just the thought of listening to Stray's soundtrack again gives me nothing less than a feeling of pure bliss. The following chapter goes into detail about the underlying story and themes. This part contains spoilers. If you haven't played the game yet, my advice to you is to skip this chapter for now and come back to it once you've experienced it for yourself. Although you take control of a cat and bask in the city's grandeur through such a small animal, the story about a cat getting back up top is only the surface level dressing. The story of Stray, more than anything else, is about understanding humanity. How it got here, how it thinks, how it's flawed as a collective, and observing its richness when looked at individually, even if the individuality is observed through a distorted lens such as that of a robot. I found the robots in Stray to be capable of evoking the same philosophical questions that movies such as Blade Runner and I, Robot tend to ask the viewer. What exactly distinguishes the life of a human being from that of a robot? At what point does a person living day after day on autopilot as a meaningless cog in an industrial system full of meaningless cogs be considered a robot? And by the same token, at what point should a robot with complexities as intricate as that of a human being be treated as a real human being? Where do you draw the line? And since the lines are so blurred, does a line separating the two even need to exist? There's a symbolic beauty embedded in the juxtaposition between the cat and the robots when it comes to the cautionary tale that Stray is trying to tell. Neither cats nor robots actually understand how or why people behave the way they do. However, they understand different fragments of humanity in their own special way. Cats understand a side of humans because, like them, they have real feelings, are made of flesh, blood, and bones. They're biological mammals born with instinct and a natural sense of self-preservation. They don't understand human nature, but they do understand nature. The gift of life and the will to survive is the mutual link between humans and cats. The two species speak in different tongues, but the struggles of life are the universal language through which both parties can understand one another. Robots, on the other hand, are modeled specifically after human beings. They animate and express themselves very much like a human would, but with the difference that the words they speak sound less like human diction and more like mumbo-jumbo and radio static. Every single fiber of their being is constructed to intuitively behave and emulate every last inch of a human being, from uncomfortable bodily sensations to displaying feelings and experiencing emotional reactions, all the way down to possessing the ability to feel true love and a fear of death. They display most human characteristics down to a T, and yet they don't understand any of it. Despite how they embrace it all, it perplexes them. The cat and the robots share different gaps in their knowledge about humans, and therefore they must combine the different parts of their knowledge between the gaps to paint one whole picture, one whole story. Aside from the cat and the robots, there's also a third party. B12, the little drone companion accompanying you throughout most of the journey, is the final puzzle piece. Unlike all the other lost souls in this dead city, B12 is not an actual robot, but a human consciousness trapped inside of one. Although the story of the stray cat and the sad robots really had me invested from the minute I pressed start, it was when B12's story arc was fulfilled that I had a truly profound moment. There were several times where I could deeply relate to the characters, but when the journey of B12 and the stray cat came to a bittersweet end, it didn't just tug at my heartstrings for relatable reasons, but rather because the payoff for the story seeds that were planted paid off masterfully. The cat, the robots, and B12 are the three mirrors, the three different angles that paint the whole picture on humanity and its consequences. The cat is the window into the impact that humans left on animals and their habitats. The robots offer a window into humanity's selfishness and greed. Humans created robots to serve them, and yet the robots were programmed with almost the same complexity of a human being. Humans became slaves of the civilization machine, meanwhile robots robots became slaves of humans. When the humans, their masters, disappeared, the robots were distraught. They suffered under humans, and yet even after they were gone, they felt betrayed, lied to, hurt, and abandoned. There's an overwhelming sense that every robot you come across longs for closure, even if they were programmed not to question it. B12 is the last remaining fragment of real, authentic humanity. The body it inhabits is nowhere near close to resembling a human, but the mind that's inside is no imitation. It's the one and only original left. Where the robots were an inversion of a cat's understanding of humans, B12 is an inversion of how robots understand them, serving as the missing key that stops them all from truly understanding the full range of the human condition. Throughout the game, B12 will have moments spent in a state of unconsciousness. Where the other robots think they have a real soul of a human being, B12 is a real soul trapped in an endless sea of computer code and darkness. B12 is terrified of getting trapped in this lonely place. It's conveyed ever so strongly, and it's because of this that then the ultimate sacrifice B12 would be willing to make in the end makes the conclusion all the more heartbreaking. B12, the last remnant of human experiences and memories, was willing to let go of all of it and face the permanence of a digital limbo. In a final effort to pay for humanity's sins, B12 does what humanity should have done all along: face the music and let nature take its course. The transfer of consciousness from a biological body to a mechanical one made no difference. One way or another, things must always come to an end. In an effort to see the cat companion and other beings no longer suffer the aftermath of humanity's creations and prolongings, B12 makes the ultimate sacrifice, draining all of its remaining power to open up the city ceiling once and for all. It is symbolic of human civilization finally letting go of its firm grasp on the need to control destiny at the expense of others' lives and finally let go of all regrets. I was not ready for a game like Stray. Figuratively speaking, I was actually looking forward to it all year, but all I was expecting really was a generic post-apocalyptic game with the cat as the only good selling point. But surprisingly, Stray left me with so much more. I was not ready for the staggering richness of the world building. I was not ready for such a well-crafted and beautiful story. I was simply not ready for the genuinely emotional story beats. I wasn't ready for how deep the rabbit hole went, or even for such a heartbreaking ending. And I most certainly wasn't ready for a memorable experience in the same vein as Limbo, Detention, or Little Nightmares, games that tell some of the most incredible video game stories without uttering a single word. I simply wasn't ready. I took my time trying to absorb everything Stray had to offer. I didn't actually manage to get all the trophies and collectibles, and my time with the game still clocked in at just shy of 8 hours, and I loved every second of it. I know many reviewers and gamers typically factor in the length of completion whenever they have to decide on recommending the game or not, but personally for me it's about the quality of the experience, not how many hours you can squeeze out of the price. Don't get me wrong, fun factor and amount of content is a huge deal for me in some games, but make no mistake, some of the most valuable games I've ever played were short and meaningful. I believe games are a true art form, and there are instances where the impact some games left on me have changed my perspective on life for the better. Stray's overly simplistic gameplay isn't going to change anyone's lives, but the emotional and narrative experience it offers is undeniably exceptional, and it will be an exemplary title for both indie games and mainstream games alike. You can find a copy of Stray at a relatively cheaper price compared to your usual AAA Sony cinematic game, and the story it has to offer can exceed many of them being sold at full price. And personally, even though it took me 8 hours to finish, I don't consider this game to be short. It tells an engaging story without wearing out its welcome, and it's exactly as long as it needs to be. Stray is by far the most adorable game of this year, but it's also one of the most surprisingly good titles I've played so far, and one that will be added to an ever-growing list of unforgettable unforgettable indie experiences. I highly, highly recommend it. And with that, The Raven draws to a conclusion. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.